right now. Okay, great. So thank you so much for your introductions. So we're going to talk about two topics today. One, I'm going to briefly talk about what summer orientation looks like and that transition for our incoming students. And then I'm going to turn it over to the panel to talk about the transition to college. And so I just want to say orientation this summer is actually two different parts. And so that's the first part is advising and registration. So that happens in July. Once you are deposited, you can sign up for one of the registration sessions. Our team, me and a team of peer advisors. So each first year student is assigned a peer advisor. That's an upper class student who's trained to help with the transition of first year students. And we really want to make sure we're supporting you. We do check-ins every quarter and make sure you have good academic progress. And so you'll get information about that later. The second part of orientation is the fun community building part. Well, registering for classes is fun too, but there's also this other part of where we want you to meet other first year students. And that can be done, and that's done through
what
our
else needs to
orientation
happen for
leaders.
people to
Can we make sure that we're on mute? Yeah, okay, great. And that's done through our orientation leaders through Bronco Exchange, and they will be doing tons of community building when you come here in the fall. And so that's a little bit about kind of what the summer will look like, and I'm sure you'll get tons of emails, so please make sure to check your su.edu email. One of the biggest things I tell first year students is that's our primary way of communicating with you, so learning email management will be such an important tool for you. And so since I'm talking about the student experience, I want to ask Eric for our student perspective. What were some of the biggest challenges transitioning to college and how did you overcome them?
Great question. Yeah, thank you, Denise. I would say definitely some of the changes that I noticed from transitioning from my high school academics to my college academics were, I'd say, threefold, especially. One would be the lecture styles. I was really surprised by how much group participation was in some of these classes and lectures. The way our business classes are styled is more of a collaborative environment of basically professors encouraging students to voice their opinions, to ask their questions, and to be more engaged in the learning. The more I participated, spoke up, asked questions, the learning, absorbing the content was a lot easier for me, the more engaged I was. So that was definitely a difference when adapting to college style learning. Another thing is more presence of case study examples within classes. For example, in my Finance 135 class, we dissected business decisions and analyzed what companies could have done better and what worked well in terms. So for example, the financial market crash, how Bear Stearns and how JP Morgan Chase bought back them basically out of bankruptcy, and just analyzing what companies would have done different and then applying our learning to how they could have made better business decisions. Another thing I love about some of the business classes here at the Leavey School of Business is we stay current. In a lot of our classes, we do current events and presentations while also applying what chapter and what content we're learning at the time. So for example, in my OMIS 34 class, which all of you will take at some point, which is our Science and Tech and Society class. We were required to do a Wall Street Journal presentation with a current event within the last 3 months that applied to the chapter we were learning on. So this was just an awesome way for me to, one, practice my presentation skills in front of all my peers and students, and then also really apply to the content that I'm learning to the outside world, and how I can apply, myself to making these types of decisions, later in my career, which was great. I also loved how some classes were really concentrated in a specific field. So it's not, finance classes aren't just generic as one big finance class. They're more tailored to specific categories. So for example, my implied investment management class, we analyzed mutual funds, decisions and portfolios that VCs are making over on Sandhill, which is a couple miles away from here. And then also analyzing how mutual funds and how these equity firms are basically handling risk management in a fully developed portfolio. So being able to really apply, our focus and class focus in a specific category and specific class was helpful. And especially in the process of learning what I wanted to do with my career, especially as a senior right now. A bit of the challenge, I would say, from high school to college definitely was the fast-paced environment. Everyone has different speeds of learning and some people get left behind. In accounting 12, which is one of our required core business classes. The first quiz, full disclosure, I fell behind. I did not do as well as I hoped to. And my grade definitely paid the price for that. But I was able to sought out resources. I contacted my professor through a simple email. He got back to me in a matter of hours. We set up an appointment during his office hours here in Lucas Hall. And we broke down my quiz, basically showed what I got wrong, the process that I should follow. And then he also referred me to tools and exercises and practice questions that I could do to practice for the next midterm. So just the ability to seek out help from a professor and establishing a relationship with them, they want to help you. They want you to do better. So that was just such a relief and just such a great resource for me to explore. And I didn't feel like I could fall behind in the class again. And come next midterm, I did much better. I was able to save my grade in the class. And the last point I want to make as well in the transition from high school to college academics, for me, was the community of this business school. It is amazing how many activities and clubs, faculty-related organizations, student-run clubs and activities is amazing. After my first Business 70 class, which you're all going to take fall quarter of your first business class, I was hungry for involvement. I wanted to know what clubs I could join. I wanted to know what I was good at. I wanted to meet new people. I wanted to meet older students, which is why I got involved with the Real Estate Association, was able to learn more about that industry and almost to apply my finance major to real estate academics and actually, develop properties and sort of the investments and developments behind these properties, as well as the SU Finance Association. I was able to basically listen and take advice from older students that have already built out their careers, and they kind of helped me form a career path of my own. Did I want to do investment banking, mutual funds, sales, product development, which was an awesome association to be a part of. And then also the student-run investment fund, being funded by sponsors and alumni in Silicon Valley to build a fund for students to actually manage and actually be able to profit from, was just crazy to get this kind of exposure in our real world market. Bottom line, the community, the relationships with faculty, and overall class participation and engagement really made the transition from high school to college a lot easier for me. I was able to adapt quickly, learn quickly, and seek out help if I needed it. And I'm still to this day thankful for the Leavey School of Business and all of it that it has to offer for me. So that's my story.
Great, Eric. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's true. We're on the quarter system, so it's really fast paced, but I really love your advice to ask for help. Like, that's okay to do because our professors love and students, and we'll hear from them in a
Absolutely.
minute. So I really love that you shared that you personally struggle with that, and that's totally normal. And to ask for help, that's such a great piece of advice. And get involved. There's so many opportunities here at Santa Clara. And so Eric is part of some really amazing student organizations. So if you have questions about that, you should drop it in the chat to hear more about Eric's experience as a student. And please feel free to just ask questions in the chat. We're here to answer them. But I just want to turn it over to our two faculty members. What's one piece of advice you would give these high school students as they're making the transition to college?
I guess I can go first. Some of the things I'm going to say is going to echo what Eric has already mentioned. I think he did a great job of giving you guys the student perspective about how the things are different. As a faculty member, what I would say is be prepared for a different kind of mindset that you have been probably in when in high school. So basically, when you're in high school, the classes that you take, they follow a textbook very, very closely, right? And usually you get this impression that to any question or problem that you're faced with, there's only one correct solution. Now that changes in college. So in college, what you're here to do is learn. It's less about knowing what the right answer is. It's about learning concepts, gaining knowledge so that you can apply those concepts to situations. And the solution that you see in every situation can be very different. I'll give you a quick example from marketing. So we all know that these days, a lot of consumer products are shifting to digital forms, right? Our music is digital, our movies are digital. During the pandemic, theaters closed down, even new releases shifted to digital. And now with NFTs, even paintings and artistry is shifting to digital formats, right? So the question is that should companies now shift to digital, right? On the one hand, what marketing teaches us is that consumers value flexibility. Flexibility is something which can add value to your product, and nothing is more flexible than having digital access to your possessions. On the other hand, from psychology and marketing, we also know that consumers like to own things. So when you have something physical with you, you have a sense of ownership with it. You can touch it, you can see it, you can place it in your house. So that is also adds value for the consumer. So you have these two concepts and they're leading to different answers. So you're going to be taught concepts like these, and then you're going to be presented with situations where you have to apply them. So when a class of 30 students approaches a problem like that company X, should they make the shift towards digital, there can be 30 different answers to that to what extent they should make that shift, because all of the students will be using the concepts and applying them critically and creatively. So I think that mindset is very important, that there's not going to be a single solution to every problem. You're going to be in a lot of classes, you will be presented with concepts, you will learn concepts, and then you have to apply them. So what you're going to be tested on is how well you applied those concepts. You're not going to be penalized for coming up with something that the professor was not thinking. In fact, you might be rewarded for that even the professor did not come up with that perspective, as long as your answers are, of course, applying the concepts that you learn in class. So that's one of the key differences that happens in college. You're actually encouraged to challenge what you're taught in class, bring new perspective, bring different perspectives. So a diversity of opinions in the classroom is what really creates a really good learning environment in college. So Esther is going to speak more about that as well, about how how to develop relationships with professors and communicate with them. But basically in the classroom, our aim is to create a learning environment for you, and you should not hesitate to participate, bring in different perspectives. So thinking critically, thinking creatively, and knowing that there's not just one answer to every problem. I would say that's, in general, one of the biggest things to be prepared of and kind of also be excited for, because it's more about learning. Just quickly, another key difference is that in high school, you might have frequent tests, you might be frequently tested on material. In college, you might not have frequent tests because the objective is, again, to learn. And the nature of the assignments and exams that you eventually do take, that is also quite different. So Eric gave a good perspective on that as well. So basically, be prepared to have different kinds of questions, and be prepared to also be in that learning mindset where you're responsible for making sure that you learn the material, take a more proactive approach. And I believe Esther is going to follow up a little bit on that stuff. So I'll hand it over to Esther then.
All right, thanks, Rafi. So yeah, to build on that, I think it's important to think about your professor not as sort of a deliverer of information to you, but as sort of a facilitator and supporter of your learning experience, right? Almost like a manager, right? And that's going to vary a little bit depending on the particular type of course, right? So something that's a math course or something that's very sort of formula oriented, right? That you do have to learn those formulas, you do have to apply them. There are correct answers, right? In some of those situations. But in other types of courses that are more conceptual, like the courses that I teach or the courses that Rafi teaches, right? It's really about your thought process and how you're thinking through coming up with an argument and supporting that argument, and communicating what you're learning, not just sort of saying, here's the answer, but how did you get to that answer? We're going to be sort of evaluating your thinking process. And so that's maybe a little bit different way to think about how to quantify your learning. And depending on the type of course, right, the structure of the lectures is going to vary, the structure of the types of assignments is going to vary. So it's important not to make assumptions about what every class is going to look like, right? You're going to get a syllabus at the beginning of every class. And a lot of students don't read that, and they really, really should. In addition to information that's sort of on all of the syllabi, which is going to be like policies for the university and things like plagiarism and protections for students who have, need learning accommodations or things like that. There's also information about what are the communication norms in this class? And what is the schedule of how we're going to be spending time? And what is the expectation of, are late assignments accepted? Is partial credit accepted? What's the attendance policy? All those things are going to vary depending on the particular professor. And so it's really important that you are proactive at understanding sort of what the expectations are in a particular course. And if you have questions, you should reach out and ask. A lot of students think that they're sort of bothering their professors if they email them with a question. If it's a question that the answer is very, very clearly in information that's already been provided to you, you should probably do your due diligence first and see if you can find the answer yourself. But if it's still unclear, or if you want to make sure about something, reach out and email them. Because they're there to help you, and sort of, we can't support you if we don't know what's going on with your situation. If you're sick, if you have a family emergency, if you have something else that's going on, it's much better to reach out beforehand, or as soon as there's going to be an issue, to manage those expectations so that the professor knows, okay, they're actually responsible, they're on top of this, they just have something else going on, as we all do as humans, right? We all have other stuff going on. And so it's important to sort of not just assume, oh, well, if I missed it, there's no chance I can make it up, I just have to chalk that up as lost points, because that might not be true for every professor. And so it's really important to sort of establish those relationships, communicate proactively, understand sort of what the norms are in a particular class environment, because it will vary quite a bit. And then another thing just that I'll share that I think is really important, college is a little bit more self-directed, right, than high school. There's more flexibility in your schedule. It might vary quarter to quarter. You may not have class every day. You may not have class the same time of day. And so, it's a good time to figure out your own sort of time management practices and what kind of works for you with stress management, and try different things, right? So try using a physical planner versus an electronic planner, see what works for you, right? Think about how you block your time. Are you someone who likes to sort of have big chunks of time where you work on things, or do you work better in short bits of time between things? Are there times of day where you feel like you're most productive for your work? So kind of paying attention to those things, so that when you leave college and you're off in the working world, you have those tools and that self-knowledge to be able to sort of succeed in a lot of different types of situations.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of the questions that are being asked were answered within the last with the faculty advisors, as there's just a lot of cultural norms in classrooms, right, that you're going to be learning as a student and coming to college for the first time, which I think Eric talked about how, really how you're learning is kind of what Rafe talked about, of really applying what you're learning to real life situations. And then Esther really talking about just expectations within the classroom and learning those new norms of like, do I raise my hand? Like, when do I go talk to my professor? I need really help in like knowing that each professor teaches their class very differently, which is a really great thing, but also for a student to be able to navigate those different styles. My first question that I'm getting is for you, Eric, is what was your transition like into the quarter system and balancing your classes and what you were involved in? Like, what did that look like your first quarter?
Great question. So of course, back in high school, I remember taking 7 classes and felt like I was drowning with every subject to put each effort into each class. Fall quarter, I took 4 classes. I took 3 classes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I took 1 class on Tuesday and Thursday. And I quickly was able to learn how much I needed to balance my time. You have a lot of time in the classroom. You also have a lot of free time, but how can you use that free time to your advantage? So as long as I was, diligent to going over my notes, studying for tests in advance, preparing for projects, getting homework submitted on time, and finding that key balance, the transition was a lot easier. I would definitely say build out your organizational habits, stick to your schedule, be accountable, and explore other activities. So just as I said, once I joined the business school fall quarter, the Leavey School of Business will have a sort of a club fair or activities fair, and there's going to be tables all around Lucas Hall here go up to existing students, talk about their involvement in their club, get inspired, put down your email on their sign up sheet, enter their emails, go to meetings. It really helped me enrich what I wanted to do as a student, even as a freshman, which is awesome.
Great, thanks, Eric. We have a question of how do students determine their major and minors?
Yes, so you can as a freshman, it's okay to be undeclared, but by sophomore year, usually you want to declare your major around then. I declared my major coming in as a freshman as finance, and you can also easily switch your major if it's okay. It doesn't have to be binding, and then you're not required to declare your major until your sophomore year. If you would like to declare a minor, you're able to do so at the beginning of your sophomore year. Good question.
That was a good question. We have all first years take a class called Business 70, which is our contemporary business class. And that class is made for first years to take so they get introduced to each of the different majors in the business school. So that gives you kind of a taste. And sometimes students use that time to kind of do a process of elimination of like, definitely don't want to do accounting. So maybe I'm leaning towards finance or marketing. And then we built our class curriculum so you get to taste of a little bit of every major. So you'll be taking like a OMIS class, which we talked about, which is the information systems class. You'll be taking accounting. You'll take an econ class just to make sure that you get some classes under your belt to make that decision.
Very helpful.
Yeah. And for our minors, there are so many different ones that we offer in the business school and in arts and sciences. It's really about sitting down and thinking about what other passions you have and if you want to explore those minors. And so that's something you can do after your first year when you get used to Santa Clara and start thinking about the future. Let's see.
Can I interject quickly with
go ahead.
Additional thing? Also, in addition to the peer advisors that you'll have as new students, everyone is assigned a faculty advisor as well. And if you're an undeclared student, the faculty advisors are a little less helpful, with picking courses and things like that, which the student peer advisors are much better at. But the faculty advisors can really help you kind of talk through and think through, like, what are you really interested in and what major or minor might make sense, and some of those kind of longer term discussions. So there are a lot of resources to help you kind of grapple through that process if you're not sure.
That's a great point.
Someone asked me, when do I get my Santa Clara email address? So once you deposit in May, you will be officially what we call matriculated into the Santa Clara system in June, and you'll get a lovely email. Eric, maybe you can talk about, and that says that you now can log into your su.edu email. So that will happen in June. But for now, we will be emailing you the email address that you had for your application. So
additionally, I'm sure you guys all have questions. I will put my email in the chat box. Feel free to send me an email about my transition to coming to college, why I chose finance, why I chose my minor, and sort of my overall experience at Leavey. I'd be happy to provide any information. So I'll go ahead and put that in there.
That was all the questions because people asked about syllabus and stuff like that, which Esther covered. Are there any other questions that people, here we go. Is the business community more competitive or collaborative? So I don't know if one of our faculty members want to take it or Eric wants to take this one.
I think I'm going to hand this to the faculty, actually.
So I would say, I think it depends. So like, there's obviously an element of personality that factors into that. There is an element, some classes will have sort of a forced grade distribution, sort of a curved grade distribution, which I think sometimes students can experience that as being a little bit more competitive, but not all faculty members use that. So for example, in my classes, I don't use that because I believe that sort of if you do really excellent work, you should get a good grade, and that sort of it's demotivating if there's a curve there. So that's my own personal philosophy, but that's a thing that different faculty members are going to vary on. So it's important to know when you go into a course, that's that. But I think, our students are wonderful and generally are collaborative and supportive. So I think sort of as a baseline, I would say it's much more of a collaborative culture than a competitive culture. But situationally, there may be times when it feels maybe a little more competitive than others, but I think that's more the exception than the rule.
Yeah, I agree with Esther. And I think that's also a good point that be prepared for how professors approach the course. So similar to the grade distribution and how grades are awarded, that is going to vary course by course. So while you might notice a more competitive grading system in some courses, in other courses, it doesn't really matter. And I will back up what Esther said, that it is a very friendly community. So I would say just approach class as, again, you're here to learn. Don't think about that I need to get a better grade than my peer. That matters less. I think the community emphasizes learning over trying to be the best at grades, because at the college stage, grades matter less. It's more about that, are you actually learning? Are you getting knowledge? Yeah.
The only, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Eric. You'll be my last one, and then I'm going to close it a little bit. Go ahead.
Sounds great. The only really level of competition I had was in my 124 investments class with Professor Wendy Koo. We did a stock track portfolio simulation, and that was a competition. So that was the only time where the races were really on. But other than that, I would definitely emphasize it's more of a collaborative environment here in our business school. I have had so many older students sort of help me out, lift me up, explore me the resources, give me examples of how they built out their career, and help me as a student, help me develop.
So our session ends at 3:30. So I want to be mindful for folks who would like to kind of exit. This is your time to do so, as we have another session of a mock class after this. And so I just want to be, if you would like to leave, me and the presenters will stay on for just a little bit more, and we're happy to answer any questions. But I want to just say thank you. Congratulations on being admitted to Santa Clara. We hope to see you in the fall. For those that are coming on Saturday, I will be there. So come on up and say hello. And we'll just wait for a few minutes if people want to leave. And yes, the session is recorded. And I'll make sure to send that off to admissions so they can send that to you. So you can go ahead and leave, and the presenters and I will hang out. I call it like the little after party, when you can just unmute yourself and ask a question. You don't have to type it in. So thank you so much for coming today. Or if you're still a little shy, you can message me your question and I'll ask the presenters. So. All right. If any